Welcome to the Rabbi and the Shrink. This is Dr. Margarita Guri, Dr. Red Shoe, and my favorite rabbi,
Yonason Goldson.
And the rabbi and I are delighted to have with us Julie Hruska. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm really excited to be here and have this conversation.
Hi, Julie.
Thanks. Oops. Thanks for taking the time. Rabbi, I stepped on you. What were you going to say?
I was saying hi, Julie.
Hello.
Well, hi. I've been researching you a little bit, and Julie comes from the world of being a teacher, and she'll tell you her story. The one thing that she doesn't ever tell anyone is she has a master's in curriculum and instruction. You can tell that when you go to her website, and it talks very clearly about who she is and what she does, but it doesn't talk about her credentials. And it's leadershipperformance.com. Did I get it right?
Powerfulleaders.com.
Sorry, powerful leader. Say it again.
Powerfulleaders.com.
Powerfulleaders.com. Sorry about that. I wrote it down wrong.
That's all right.
And if you look there, you can see that she's created from our desire to choose the life that we want to live, we want to love. She's gone from 0 on LinkedIn to 70,000 followers. And we're eager to hear what she has to say, because she has the formula to help us all understand where we are and how to get to this place where we love the way we're living. So how did it get started, Julie? What's the origin story? You were minding your business as a teacher, and then what?
Yeah, so, God has an interesting way of taking us on our journey in life. And so it goes back a little further. I was raised in a very conservative family where it was expected of me to grow up, get married, have children, period. That was the trajectory of my life. And so I did that. One of the reasons I chose to become an educator is because it was a good teacher job or parent job. So if I did work while I had children, then I could have their schedule. So that was an interesting adventure of mine. So I did just that. I got engaged when I was 19, married at 20 while I was still in college.
Wow.
And then I started having kids at 24, stopped teaching, stayed at home with my kids to raise them. And my oldest son is severely dyslexic, ADHD, and he wasn't learning to read at a traditional school. So he needed to go to a specialized school that was quite expensive. So that's when my former husband and I had the discussion, and we decided that I would go back to work. But I'd been out of the workplace for over a decade. So to be marketable and to be relevant, I decided to go back and earn my master's degree, which was in curriculum and instruction. So during that time, I went out to a brain-based gender differences conference in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And I had what I consider an awakening experience. People were calling me by name. I was no longer just my former husband's wife or Ethan, Sydney, and Aaron's mom, but I was Julie again. And that sparked this awakening to realize that I'd virtually been sleepwalking through my life. I had adopted my parents' idea of what my life should be, and I was living it. And so that kind of sparked this entire evolution of my soul, which now I help other people evolve and transform their lives. So going from there, do you want to go or should I keep talking?
Yeah, go from there.
I'd actually like to dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I was then teaching kindergarten. I became a single mother of 3. I took full custody of my oldest son and primary custody of my younger 2. And so they were, all 3 were with me Sunday through Friday. And my youngest was 6 years old. And one day he came to my kindergarten classroom and fell asleep on the floor, the dirty floor where all the kids had been all day long. And it broke my heart. And I realized that if I was going to serve my children the way that they needed me to, I needed to change my life. And part of that involved changing careers. At the time, I was into power yoga. So I was like, wow, power yoga has been so empowering to me. I'm going to transform the world with power yoga. Everyone needs it, right? And so I quit my salary job, very risky with 3 children, and became a yoga instructor full time. And probably within a few weeks of doing that, I realized that yoga was just a tool for transformation. It wasn't the whole enchilada, right? And so at that time, quitting my job and becoming an entrepreneur, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no business training.
Well, thank heavens, or you wouldn't have done it.
Right? Exactly. I tell my kids that all the time. So I do what all good people do in this century. I Google searched how to effectively run a business. I went through all the online course offerings, and I came to one that was related to high performance with the High Performance Institute. And that course was 6 weeks. And in it, it took me through clarity, courage, energy, productivity, all of these high performance habits. And it was like, ding, 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 ding. This is what I'm meant to do. I thought yoga was what everyone needed. This is what every single person in the world needs. Everyone needs clarity on who they are and how they're showing up in the world. Everyone needs courage to step beyond their fear toward freedom, toward becoming their best selves. And so through that process, I went to a live, pre-pandemic, a live 4-day high performance academy. And it changed my life right away. There was a coaching program. I signed up. At the time, it was focused on career, relationships, emotions, and health. And what I found after a few years of coaching was there was a key component missing, which was finance.
I'm glad you added that.
And the reason I added finance is because if I help people create this clarity and this vision for the life they love, and they can't fund it, if there's no liquidity there, I'm just a dream merchant. And that doesn't really serve anyone.
You've touched on so many topics we could go into, and I hope we will. I'd like to go back to this conference you attended, where you said you had your awakening, and used a phrase that we hear from time to time. You felt like you were sleepwalking.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of us have that kind of experience because we're trying to meet other people's expectations. And like Socrates said, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And if my experience has just guided me down a certain course, and I don't have the vision, or I don't believe in myself, or I don't have the opportunities to see beyond that, you can go through your whole life that way.
Absolutely. It's we blindly accept some things that I consider like indoctrination, right?
Yes.
And I do this, I've done this with my kids, and you will probably appreciate this, Rabbi, in the form of religion. When someone comes to a religion or a set of beliefs and it's their own, and they investigate it and they have faith in it and they accept it and follow it, it's so much more powerful than when they're just told it. This is what you're supposed to believe.
Yeah.
Much more.
And so I think we have that in our society where we indoctrinate people based on our family, based on our background. And a lot of people don't question it. They blindly accept it until one day they have some experience. It could be a divorce. It could be a terminal illness. They have something that sparks an awakening. And unfortunately, what happens is it's scary. So they just go back to sleep. They're like, I don't want to change. It's going to take too much. They have that fear. And so they go back and they're like, you know what? It's okay. This is good enough.
I don't think most people do that. I think most people retreat. They find it scary, overwhelming, and they go back to not sleepwalking, but say, this is what I chose.
Yeah.
And they convince themselves. Why is it that you sparked? What is it, the people who are sleepwalking, what can they learn from your journey? Because I know you've got it down in your head and in your heart. what can they do to have the courage? What kind of thoughts they can have to go ahead and make the change?
I think the first thing you have to do when you're faced with fear is look at the limiting beliefs. Look at what, you're telling yourself each and every day that holds you back. Usually it's the form of something, a limiting belief that you came to subconsciously in your childhood that says, I'm not enough. I can't do this. Change is hard. All of these lies that we accept, when you can identify that, you can confront it and reframe it and move on. Instead of saying, I can't do it, say, I believe in my ability to figure this out. Instead of saying, I'm not enough, dive into, I'm capable, I'm confident. So it's really about paying attention to your mindset and the internal voice.
And you know what you said earlier, Julie, that when we choose our beliefs, we're much more passionate, we're much more focused.
Absolutely.
Than when we simply absorb them. And this is, Doctor, because this is one of the themes that has brought us together, that so many of us today simply absorb the values around us. And we don't make those choices, and we haven't thought our beliefs through. And so they're not really our beliefs, and that gives us this lack of confidence. I mean, how can I stand up for something I don't really understand? How can I defend something or fight for something if I never really chose it? So it's the discomfort of whether we challenge our own beliefs or whether we allow others to challenge our beliefs, or whether situations just put us in circumstances where we have to reevaluate. It's a tremendous blessing, although it may not feel like that in the moment.
It never does. No, it's terrifying because there's a lot of comfort in status quo.
Yes.
There's a lot of predictability in waking up each and every day, going to a job, working for 8 hours, coming home, eating dinner, watching TV, going to sleep, rinse and repeat, Monday through Friday, have a little fun on the weekend, go back to it. There's a lot of safety there, but with low risk comes low reward.
Absolutely. The rabbi and I were talking earlier. One of the ways I think we box ourselves in is with loyalty and commitment to certain relationships, whether they be business or personal. Rabbi, you had a thought about that, and then I wanted Julie, you to comment on it. What do you think about that?
Well, part of so much of ethics is not choosing between right and wrong, because that's pretty obvious, or should be. It's choosing between right and right, or wrong and wrong. It's choosing between competing values and trying to figure out how to prioritize. And I'm moved by your story, because you have this tremendous commitment to your children and to the family that supports the children. And at the same time, you felt there was something untenable in that situation. What insights can you give us about how we can manage those kinds of competing values when we have to make life-changing decisions?
That's brutal. I mean, to be really honest, it's brutal, because when we love people, or, especially if there are family values, our traditional family, our parents and whatnot, it's very difficult to have the courage to step beyond that. But you do have to look at a sense of clarity with who you are, who you truly are, and what you know to be right. And you have to act from that. It's the only way that you can have integrity in your life.
And yet, one of the things I know as a psychologist is that we're all wonderful. We're also all awful. And I think we have to get over it, And I think that the awful can help us get to that path that you're talking about, right? As a high performance person, leader, coach, right?
Yeah. I mean, when part of developing clarity, and I always go back to clarity because I believe it's the foundation of high performance. You have to have that. Part of the clarity is, who are you right now? The good and the bad. You can't just focus on the good. I used to try to do that. I really like the concept of living in a bubble and everything's perfect and I control everything around me and it's really magical. Unfortunately, it's not reality.
No.
So you have to be clear if you want to create change. You have to be clear on who you are right now, the good and the bad. And then you have to have the vision for where you want to go. And from that, you'll see the gap. So what I do with my clients is we examine the area of career, relationships, health, and finance. And we look at where they're performing at their optimal levels and where they're not, where there's room for growth. And those are the areas that we dive into, because everyone is very unique. So it's hard to say, you know, this applies to all people because everyone's journey is so different, but there are those guiding principles.
I think that's absolutely brilliant. I saw that in your certified high performance coaching on your website that you have these 12 areas. I'll read them really fast. Then tell us about them. I was fascinated by your curriculum development. It was masterful. Okay, bad pun. Focal points, clarity, energy, courage, productivity, influence, psychology mastery, physiology mastery, productivity mastery, persuasion mastery, purpose mastery, and commitment to high performance. All right, tell us about those. I was intrigued.
Yeah, so that is the base curriculum of certified high performance coaching that the High Performance Institute created. So I can't claim that I created that. I bring my own special sauce to it, definitely. And the way I describe it is very unique based on what I do. But I trained with the High Performance Institute, and there's a set of habits, 6 habits that over more than a decade of research revealed the top 1%, the highest performers in the world all have. And it's seeking clarity, generating energy, raising necessity, increasing productivity, developing influence, and demonstrating courage. And so from that, those sessions were created.
That's brilliant. I thought you were the Institute.
I've trained with the Institute and I do some work with them, but I'm not the entire Institute.
Well, I'm glad because I was so tired for you.
That would be exhausting.
I'm thinking, what? So you're finding a bunch of people who are ready to have the courage, and I think your energy is infectious. What is it that holds people back from saying, I'd like to get started. I'm ready for the journey with you. What holds people back?
Oh my goodness, so many things. Limiting beliefs, number one.
Yes.
It's going to be hard. It's going to cost too much. There's all of these things. Ego. There's a lot of ego. I tend to work with people that are already successful, and I help them reach the next level, the highest level of their potential and possibility. And so there's a lot of ego. Oh, I don't need that. A lot of dismissal. The things I put out on LinkedIn are, you know, a few paragraphs or a 2-minute video. And a lot of it's common sense, but common sense isn't always common practice. Or
it's not so common either.
Right?
Yeah.
Which is what we're finding these days, right?
Yeah.
So I see that as people are like, well, duh, I can do that on my own. I have a client right now. He's like, I thought I could watch your videos and all of the free content you put out and transform my life. He's like, but our sessions are so deep and so transformative. There's no way you can do it on your own.
And of course, this is the real, the key to it all is that the concepts are usually not that difficult. And you can get concepts in a book or an article or a video or a podcast.
Right.
But when it actually comes to, okay, now how do I take the concept and apply it to me, my situation, my personality? And the real value of a coach, or you'll tell me if this is right, that one, a coach has a certain objectivity.
Mm-hmm.
Coach can see me more clearly and objective than I can see myself. And second is a coach can hold me accountable.
Yes.
Whereas I'll make excuses for myself, and the coach will actually say, here is what you need to do, what you have done, what you haven't done.
Right.
And without that structure being imposed upon us, it's far more challenging for us to put those principles into practice.
Absolutely. And the definition of high performance is a goal-focused individual who succeeds beyond the standard norms over the long term. So it's about sustained growth. You hear a lot of people that are like, oh, I was really successful at this point in my career. And that goes to peak performance. But if you look at peak performance, you go up, you peak, and you crash. And that's not really what we want in life, right? We want to have this upward ascension and then stay there. We want to stay up. We want to keep going and keep growing and continue to become a better version of ourselves. So it is so important. I'm not here to say every single person in the world should work with me, because everyone has to find their individual coach or mentor. But it is so important to have someone that will call you out when you're not performing at the best within you, when you're not aligned and congruent, and having integrity in your character.
Well, the one thing I've noticed in your readings and your videos, the interviews, you also bring, you said your special sauce. One of the things I see is you bring a certain kindness. You're very direct but kind. And I think one of the values of a good coach is someone who can be practical, realistic, and kind. And we were talking with you earlier, the rabbi and I, and we noticed your point of view of abundance and sharing and kindness. Why don't you speak to that? Why are you so kind, and why are you willing to share all your stuff with everyone? What's that about?
Number one, I believe that I was put on this earth to awaken, empower, and inspire people to be the best versions of themselves. And I know my bandwidth is not such that I can work with every single person in the world. Like, that would be ridiculous, right? So what I do with LinkedIn is I put out content that will help people become better versions of themselves, whether or not they ever work with me. So that's one thing. With coaches, and we were talking about this, that coaches, you mentioned my website, which is powerfulleaders.com. Coaches have come to me and said, wow, your copy is really great. Can I use this description on my website? Can I use this description in my marketing? And I'm like, sure, I wrote it. It's, I took what was created, like in the descriptions you were talking about from High Performance Institute, I added my special sauce. But there's an abundance out there.
Yes.
There are so many coaches. I would caution people to find qualified, trained coaches, because it's a little bit dangerous how people can just declare themselves something these days, especially on social media. But I would say find a qualified coach. But there's an abundance out there. And I feel like I have all of this awareness. I've studied, I've done all these trainings, and I want to serve the greater good. And so I'm happy to share.
That's clear. And I caution everyone that just because someone's certified doesn't mean they're a kind and thoughtful mentor and coach.
Oh,
And,
yes.
I think that some people instill bad feelings and fear in people because it makes them loyal to them. When we're afraid and feel unworthy, we cling to the person that we think is the solution. I don't see you doing that. And I'm very pleased to say, I think that anyone who works with you, I have faith they will grow and learn if they're honest and courageous.
Yeah, thank you very much. And you touched on a topic that I actually experienced recently with my own form of a coach that I was working with. And it goes to the ethics of coaching. A lot of people, unfortunately, in the coaching industry will create a problem, make you think that you have problems, and then miraculously they're the only person that can solve your problem. So they will come in and exploit your vulnerabilities and your weaknesses and then sell themselves or their product as your only solution. And it's dangerous, it's reckless, and
it's mean.
Yeah, it is. It's mean, and it's scary, because I watched myself, who's a very discerning person, spend a month working with someone who, my experience, I mean, I felt gutted. I felt like a gutted fish. My confidence was going down. My mood was changing. My tolerance and patience for people was going down. It was brutal, and it was terrifying, because I'm in the industry. I know the red flags, but yet the way this person presented themselves made me feel like if I didn't work with him, my business was not going to scale the way I needed it to.
Well,
He
and that's
did-
the risk of opening ourselves up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
essentially bullied you into
Yeah.
becoming dependent upon him.
Well, that's
terrible.
and that's what's really scary. The most qualified coaches, psychologists, psychiatrists, rabbis, leaders, help empower people
Yes.
to go beyond them.
Yeah.
And that's our job. And I
You
take
wanna
it
not
very
be needed.
seriously.
We
You
wanna
are not
not be
trying to
needed.
make people
Right.
dependent on you.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, the definition of a teacher or a parent is someone trying to make themselves obsolete.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want, I like it when my kids come and ask my advice and ask my counsel and use me as a sounding board, but I don't want them needing me to tell them what to do. If that's the case, I have failed as a parent.
Absolutely. And we
I-
want our children to be better looking and kinder and smarter and more confident and more competent and more everything than us.
Right.
And I think the same with our coachees. And the rabbi and I coach and advise individuals and organizations. And we like it when people feel that with the work with us, that they can conquer the world and that they
Absolutely.
don't need us. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that should be the goal, right?
Yes.
One of my mentors in my yoga training, and I have over 2,000 hours of yoga training. So I did an extensive yoga, mindfulness, and meditation training. It was probably the best advice I ever had. He said, Julie, dissolve the teacher. Like, make yourself disappear. And I didn't understand that. I'm like, I'm standing in front of the room. Everyone's looking at me. That's just how it is, right? But what he was saying is, it's about them. Make it about them. It's not about you. And this is something I talked with Dr. Margarita about ahead of time, was the reason I'm not juliehruska.com. It's not about me. I don't want it to be about me. It's about them. It's about who I serve, and I'm creating. I'm helping them become powerful leaders.
That generosity of spirit that you demonstrate and that abundance mindset that you demonstrate, I mean, that really is so integral to our whole focus on ethics, because it really means I am here to serve others. I am here because of the positive impact I can have on the world around me. And when we focus like that, in the Torah teachings, the sages say that no one can take even a grain of salt that's meant for you. If we believe that we are here to fulfill a purpose and that we have a destiny, and that so is everybody else,
Yes.
then we don't have that sense of competition. If somebody else is succeeding, that means that I'm somehow failing. And Teddy Roosevelt said the comparison is the thief of joy. We're always trying to see, well, what happens if, right? It's that whole attitude that makes us feel fulfilled in what we're doing. And it gives us the confidence and the courage, as you say, to do what we need to do to succeed.
Right. The only person you should compete with is who you were yesterday. The goal is to be a better version of yourself each and every day, learn and grow and thrive. And so if you adopt that mindset, there's no competition. It's not about it's not about what any other coach is doing. And I'll have people ask me that, oh, did you see what so-and-so did? Not really, usually not, because I'm here and I'm focused on my clients and my community on LinkedIn. And I'm focused on that, what I can give to the world, how I can help, how I can serve. I'm not really looking around to see what other people are doing. I'm happy to cheer them on, but that's not really my focus.
Well, good for you. And I'm glad that it only took a month of opening yourself up to a learning experience to realize that he was the one, or he or she was the one that needed to do the learning about being positive. So I'm glad that we learn these lessons over and over again that end up helping other people as good warnings. So
you know what happened there is we all have limiting beliefs.
We do.
Even though we can courageously step beyond them,
Yes.
they're within us. He was masterful in recognizing in our conversations my limiting beliefs, and he exploited them. And so in that exploitation, of course, then miraculously, if you stay with me, if you work with me, I will. But yeah, it was very dangerous.
Well, whatever money you paid him was worth it, because you came out on top with a wonderful story that with no limiting belief on that.
Ooh,
right?
You know, it reawakened me to the industry.
Good.
And how important it is that people that do have good ethics, morals, and integrity speak louder.
They do.
Yeah.
They do.
I
And
love the way you phrased it, Doctor, that the sages say that you can learn from every person, or a wise person is one who learns from every person. Some people we learn from by counterexample.
Absolutely.
And that's a lesson too.
worth every cent.
Honestly, the most impactful lessons I've learned have been by my hardships and through my challenges.
Well, we're glad that you're a resilient soul and a generous one at that. I'm very, very impressed. And I urge everyone, if you want to choose the life that you love, to think about doing coaching. The powerfulleaders.com is waiting for you right there. And you've got many opportunities. You've got lots of free videos. People can check you out. If you just put your name, Powerful Leader, and Julie Hruska, it's Hruska. Say that 3 times. Hruska. The spelling, I didn't get it right. And I've listened to the interviews. Many people don't, but they'll certainly remember Julie, and they'll remember you forever. Rabbi, is it time for your word of the day?
I believe it is.
And when
Word
we
of the day
come
comes
back,
to us.
Julie, we're going to ask you for a call to action, your final words. Rabbi, sorry.
The word of the day comes from our friend Susan Rooks, the grammar goddess. But I'm going to introduce the word of the day with one quote and follow it up with another quote.
I can't wait to hear what it is. I don't know
well,
if people know this, but I don't know the word. So I'm about to be surprised with them.
That's right. We'll let the suspense build for just a moment. King Solomon says in Proverbs, do you see the person diligent in work? He shall stand before kings and does not need to present himself before those who stand in shadow. And the word of the day is penumbral. Penumbral, which refers to the shadow, the partial shadow that resides outside the complete shadow, or relates to being shadowy, indefinite, or in a marginal area. And I think that it's a word that very much fits in with our conversation today, because it's easy for us to stay in the shadows, or to just sort of creep out to the periphery of the shadows where we're not fully exposed. We're afraid to step into the light. We're afraid to make bold decisions or take bold steps because, as you've told us, and as we know, it's scary, and we're making ourselves vulnerable, and we're taking risks. And yet if we just stay in those shadows, then we're not living our full lives. We're not developing our potential. And I think this is so fundamental to the whole concept of ethics. I have an ethical responsibility to be the best person I can be.
Yes.
And that means I have to seek out the opportunities, the coaches, the mentors that I can in order to help me develop myself. Because if not, then I'm leaving the world with less of me then I had the opportunity to contribute. And I'll leave you up. We mentioned Teddy Roosevelt once, but this is one of my favorite quotes from him. He says, "Far better it is to dare mighty things, to win glorious triumphs, even though checkered by failure, than to rank with those poor spirits who neither enjoy nor suffer much, because they live in a great twilight that knows not victory nor defeat."
Oh,
Let's not live penumbral lives. Let's step into the light and shine.
wow.
That's
Well
so
done.
powerful. It reminds me of Marianne Williamson has a quote that talks about it's our darkness, not our light, that we fear the most. And it is that, right? Like we have an ethical responsibility. God put us on this earth for a reason. And it is our responsibility to step into that opportunity and let our light shine, because we cannot know who needs us. We don't know that. So you have to step out. You have to be bold. You have to follow that heart calling, that reason that you were created.
Well, that's
And you
a
have.
beautiful way to phrase it. And thank you, Julie, for sharing your insights and your inspiration with us. And thank you, Doctor, for always being able to manage the show and keep
Pleasure.
us on track and keep us focused. And do you have a last word for us?
Well, I do. Being the psychologist I am, let's talk about Julie's journey. She started with the shadow. And Dr. Carl Jung talks about shadow. And what is the shadow but that part of her personality that we don't want to see or admit is there? And yet, it's in some ways the biggest gift we have. So when I was getting my confirmation, I'm Catholic, and Father Juan Sosa was the guy in charge. I knew him before he was a priest. Good guy. And he would say that God gives us our talents so that we could do his work. But it's in those weaknesses, those challenges that he gives us, that we find the true path. Because a lot of people have a lot of gifts, but sometimes it's those weaknesses, like whether it's a self-limiting belief, or luckily your child had a learning difference, right? Thank heavens you're a good mother, great mother, with the ability and desire to do anything you needed for your child. And those yucky things that you felt about yourself didn't limit you, because you were there to be there for your child. And I think that if everyone has the courage, I want everyone to raise their hand and pat themselves on the back, and say, if Julie's there believing in me, who am I to disagree? So those are my thoughts. Julie Hruska and the good rabbi and myself, we want to thank everyone and wish you well on your journey to creating the life that you deserve and the life that you love by being powerfulleaders.com. Thank you, Julie. Again, you were wonderful. It's a delight.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you, Rabbi. It has been my honor to be with you today. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. I really appreciate it.